Good day. This is Regina's Rabbit Hole. I am attempting to share my screen. I want to talk to you about Immaculate Conception. Let's see if I can put that on here. Good day. Much love to you and yours. Okay. Sad. I'm going to talk about the Immaculate Conception. Much love to you and yours. This is Regina's Rabbit Hole, Siren Buddha Medicine, and this is Talk Therapy. We're not sad today. You know, we vented, we got it out, we're dealing with it, we're doing the best we can, dealing with our circumstances. I'm with my studies that I love so much. That's what brings me joy. The currency of knowledge and sharing it, and how we're awakening, you know, out of this sleep state. And, you know, if there's nobody there to hear it, something is wrong. At least somebody's there to hear it, that we're learning, and evolution is at hand. Okay, so today I want to talk about the Immaculate Conception. We have a different history than what we've been told, and I've been going over this for a while. I want to share with you. I hope you can see my screen. What I'm doing right now is giving you the two books that I was using on the YouTube, comparing the book of Joseph with the book of Joseph and Aseneth. As we know, we're giving one side of the story when we go to particular churches and stuff. Good day, family. Much love to you and yours. We're talking about Immaculate Conception, how we have a different story in our earth history than what we've been told. There's different books, like there's the book of Thor, right? That people are comparing to other characters in the Bible. For instance, Mary and the Immaculate Conception as a woman with the Bible that always just used to like the whole story. And there were different interpretations of it. For instance, there's always another layer or a way of looking at things. What I'm getting at is we're told how the unconscious mind, or how ancestral memory can change a culture. For instance, a lot of us who study history are taught that story about how they would beat the strongest the strongest male buck and to an inch of his life, or even kill him and let the other slaves watch, and that fear would go into the ancestral memory. You know how I am about always concentrating on the negative part of the pole when we learn, and not the other side. So the other side is, yes, we know about things like a stolen legacy. We know about how with our ancestral memory, they could put the fear of something in you to the point where that thing becomes like a god to you. So when I'm talking about ancestral memory and the way we're made, I'm looking at this Immaculate Conception and women. So like, why are women raising their children girly, and how things about women, how women are the ones who take the messages of the men, of the culture from the men, and instill it into their children, boys and girls, right? The way that women work, our pheromones and stuff like that, and our interaction with men. There's not a lot of talk for women about women other than the programming, not what we actually are. So I went on this hunt in my studies, and the Immaculate Conception was on the forefront of my mind. And basically because of the way we're made and our ancestral history has not been told to us in the way that it is. Now, I want to start out with Freud. We know how he talks about the conscious mind and the unconscious mind. For those of you who don't know, I study psychology. And even people who don't study psychology, Freudian theory is one of the things that most people can pull out of a hat. Just like when you say, who's your favorite poet? A lot of people can say, oh my gosh, it was right there in my brain. Maya Angelou is one of the poets that often comes to people's minds right away. Okay, so we have Freud, but a student of Freud was Jung. And Jung is, I wrote this paper on personality. I did pretty good on it. Anyway, Jung fascinated me because he had an alternative viewpoint that he was using, that used to rub the other, according to the literature, rub the other psychologist the wrong way. Now, he would talk about ancestral memory, but he talked about it in a different way than we were used to hearing it. about ancestral memory and how the fear could get into our bones, how we could teach this fear to our children. In the same way that fear of genetic annihilation has been taught to Caucasians, there's different programmings running throughout different cultures, okay? And part of our problem is the naiveness and we're not aware of our Earth history and how things are a lot different than what we thought they were. So in my psychology personality book, this one was the best one that I could come up with for this idea. Jung's analytical psychology. Now, Jung also saw the personal unconsciousness as containing both past, retrospective, and future, prospective material. This grew from the observation that many of his patients experienced dreams that were related to future issues and events. It is not that they see the future, but rather they sense things that are likely to happen. Remember, I was talking about those hairs in the back of your neck and, being desensitized and, how we're programmed to deviate away from our inner nature and the quieter sensibilities, the things that you have to really quiet yourself and know yourself to get into. You know what I'm saying? These spaces that sometimes people only tap into when they dream. Further, the personal unconsciousness serves to compensate, balance unconscious attitudes and ideas. That is, if a person's conscious views are very one-sided, the personal unconsciousness may accentuate the opposing viewpoint through dreams or other means in an attempt to restore some sort of equilibrium. That was Jung, 1961, that little quote there, and Jung 1990. Now, remember in the Freudian slip, that's like that. The things that we try to hide, they seep out through our nature. That's why we're embedded, our nature, our intention. We're like code beings, and inside, your intentions and your feelings are still there. We're made different. We're made different than we have been realizing. And so that's why even your intention comes out in your body language and your eyes, the way you look and stand and stuff like that. Okay. Happiness would lose its meaning if we were not balanced by sadness. Modern research confirms that there are such automatic mental processes outside of conscious attention that influence how we react to others, in particular situations, and how we pursue our goals. What? So, yeah, we know that genetic memory can steer us away out of fear. But do we know that genetic memory can do some other fantastic stuff too? And we're about to hit the other side of this pole. What? Not into fear, but into empowerment with our genetic memory. This feels really good to be able to share this part. For example, if we have been thinking about our friends, or we are in a good mood, we are more likely to behave altruistically according to that, like those feelings that come up. If you're feeling positive, you're more likely to bring those correspondence, vibration, frequency. The collective unconscious, this is the part that gets really cool. Perhaps the most controversial is the comprise a deeper level of unconsciousness and is made up of powerful emotional symbols called archetypes. Archetypes. Who's studying epidology and ciphering out there? Etymology and ciphering. Okay? Archetypes. The collective unconsciousness, Jung says, is composed of archetypes. Now, I'm looking at, okay, here we go. Now, we're talking about the male and female spirit being off a lot of the times. Animus and anima. Two important archetypes are animus, the male element of a woman, and anima, the female element of the man. Animus archetype implies that each woman has a masculine side and a corresponding innate knowledge of what it means to be male. And anima archetype implies that female side and therefore a knowledge of what it means to be female resides in every man. Then we have the shot of, he has these archetypes. Check them out. Matter of fact, I'm going to pop in one of Jung's videos when I put this up on YouTube. Okay, but yeah, you could go on there yourself and you could look up Jung and you can find his personality theories and his archetypes. His archetypes bring in a lot more stuff on the unconscious mind. What I want to get at is the archetypes and archons. Okay, now Joseph, we're back to the Immaculate Conception. Who is Mary? You know, as a woman, like, who was she? Where did she come from? Can you hear it? It's the part to listen to. Did you hear that? This Joseph of Aseneth was gathering grain. She was a virgin. She was kept aside in this big hall where she had a bed that was surrounded by golden idols and stuff. And she had royal colors of purple and gold. And she was being reared to be the bride of a king by her parents. And no one ever saw her but her parents and her 7 sisters, who were women, also women that were her same age, born on the same day, that they took from the surrounding areas to keep her company. So there were 7 brides that were like her sisters that she grew up with. You don't really hear anything about who Mary actually was, but you knew she came from a priesthood. Did you hear what Aseneth said, who's later called Mary, we know as Mary? She said he's an alien and a slave and a captive. Okay? He's one of the most powerful men now at the time, but she's a spoiled virgin bride who's been surrounded by all this stuff. She's planning on marrying the king's son, and she's not happy right now. She said he's an alien. So I'm saying that our history is not what we've been told. And this immaculate conception is really an immaculate conception. Archons and archetypes are pretty much one and the same. Light code beings, we are light code beings, and our ancestors, some manifested in flesh, but others were just light codes still being. They're stars. They're light manifested. Sometimes you get a body, there's different levels, and sometimes not. We're waking up right now where some of us have the vessels that can contain these light code beings, these Anakis, these archetypes, these light codes, these archons. Okay? Now, that's what um, I want to show you some more of this Joseph video. Okay, so there clarifies the other book that we know from the Bible of Joseph with the things that she said. That he was accused of sleeping with his master's wife, you know, and so we're getting clarification as to who he is. He's gathering grain. She's a virgin. Only thing different about her is we're hearing more history, and her name is different. But Joseph is still Joseph. So, how many of us remember seeing pictures of the Anunnaki engraved on the Egyptian walls, and pictures of them with the chariots, you know, and the bird face or the reptilian face and the wings um, with the chariots? Okay. I'm going to fast forward a bit. She repents. I mean, she totally freaks out after meeting Joseph, and he tells her about his gods and that, you know, basically she's not fit. She's not fit at all. She throws away all her idols and gods. You got to go ahead and click on that link and listen to this more extensively. Also, for you, uh, the regular book of Joseph. Also, okay. All right, so check that out. We're moving forward on this. I want to show you. Say hello to my little friend, this book. Here we are. Where Joseph visited in Canaan. The top part is supposedly a picture of what the people look like in Egypt. And this, I mean, and let me get this right. The partitional family to which Joseph belonged to pasturized his flocks in Canaan. The Mennonites, to whom his brothers sold him, moved by a well-known route from Gideon over the Jordan fords near the Beth Shean, through the plain of Dothan, past Carmel, and so down the main route to Egypt. Joseph's purchaser could have been in royal service at either Rotaway, 13th dynasty, or neighboring Avars. Hyksos. Like preceding dynasties, the Hyksos ruled Egypt and Memphis and its administrative suburb, Ititawi. Alongside these, they use Avaris and the East Delta as a summer residence. So this one on the bottom here are the people that had took him captive. And if you listen to that video of Joseph and Aseneth versus Joseph and Mary from our Bible, you'll see the differences in appearance and in our Earth history. Check out Asir, Duke of Tears, and his research, phenomenal research he did on our Earth history. As well as Dan Winters, which I'm going to show you, but I really want to give you a Sears video right now. And I know I set it aside. It's so weird. It's not right by my side where I wanted it. I'm going to have to do this. There we go. That was easier than scrolling. I'm going to pop this in there for you. Yeah. Okay. We know our Earth history is not what they said it is. This tape is freaking phenomenal. Like, this is Sparta. It's all in the head as far as the Earth history and, the Moorish history and stuff like that. Really do check this out. What am I getting at with this? Fits in with, we were once giants. Yes. Yes, Regina didn't lose her mind. Yeah, we were once giants. Some of us were larger. Um, some of us could be as big as mountains, while other ones were like a David and Goliath kind of thing. And even Benjamin was large. Listen to that book, Joseph and Aseneth. A matter of fact, let me flip for 1 second back there um, to that book for 1 second. I want you to hear the end, the very end. Did you hear that? Your father Israel, that's Jacob, is like a god to me. Now listen to the way Israel, yeah, Jacob is described before I get into Asir. So they didn't age like everyone else. What? His feet and hands looked like those of a giant, and he looked like a man that had wrestled with God. He had a youthful appearance, although he had white hair, and he was a dark-skinned man. What? Now, she's a grown woman. I just wanted you to hear that part. She's a grown woman. And she can hang from his neck. He's that big. She's hanging from his neck. So the proportions that when we're reading these stories, the proportions aren't even, we hear David and Goliath and we think, okay, well, he was a giant. But then when we hear stories about how there were giants that actually were in the earth, we don't want to believe it. Duke of Tears. Wait. The Moorish history of the planet. Take note to the size of the doorway. Who built these temples? Who built the pyramids? We did. Our genetic code was different. Some of us were giants. They have mounds and they have bones and stuff of giants in the earth that they're still uncovering. They like to keep that really on the low. You don't hear the stories about the giants. And even the trees that we're hearing about, the landscapes that we're looking at now, were actually calcified trees, that there was an earth war where some serious technology was used and much of the landscape was calcified, and some of our ancient civilizations was drowned underwater. It was submerged underwater. And then there was technology used where part of our brain shut down. We systematically were moved around and things were destroyed and we forgot. So when we read the Bible, Joseph and Mary as a woman, and you hear, and she's so mysterious. The women are so mysterious. And you see that Mary is Aseneth. And you see that Joseph is a part of this lineage of these giants, of these archons, of this alternative earth history that they're not telling us, okay? That some of us are looking up. Following along the Hebrew Israelite history and the Moorish history, along with the Earth galactic history. All right, now I put that video in there of our brother Duke of Tears. He's talking about the giants. Check out the Book of Solomon. Who built the temples? It tells us right there. It's segmented. And the same way that a character can morph, check out Zygest, okay? Where the usurping of our ancient history has caused a morphing of the characters, okay? They're just named something different throughout the world. And sometimes we traveled, okay? So I put that video in there for you to check that out on your own. And now I'm going to go to the Dan Winters video so you can check that as far as alternative Earth history, things they're not telling us. The purpose of DNA. Check this. DNA is different, okay? Now, get this. Hebrew Israelite, okay? The Phoenician bloodline, the the Archons, um, the lineage of Jesus and Mary. Some of the bloodline is us, and those Hebrew Israelites, it's a different kind of embedding, okay? Just like they say the Hebrew language is a chemical language. It's a chemical language because each and every part of the letter is embedded and has a deeper meaning. The language itself is a genetic code, is a light code frequency. Are you getting it? You are a light code being. If you're talking about self-perpetual embedding, the DNA code, a light code being, if you're a Hebrew Israelite, and you're talking about the fifth element, where those creatures looked so different, and then when he cut off a little tiny finger and grew it back until the woman, as far as self-disclosure in that movie, The Fifth Element, where those things were clunky and they looked like robots, like giant clocks walking around like this. And a little finger came off and got stuck in the door when they left. And he took that little finger and put it into the cloning machine, and the genetics on it was so strong that it made a whole woman that was still capable of saving the day. Some people still have 6 fingers. Indeed, that goes along with the Hebrew letters and how it takes. I won't even get into that because you won't even understand that stuff. 3 sets of 9 and this apple that's in the 3 parts with the embedded light code frequency that I'm talking about. But you can go check that out. I've showed it to you before. But not as it pertains to this. As it pertains to the genetic code, it's a lot more embedded than we think it is. And so we've lost a lot of our genetic code. Like I said, we used to be giants. There was genetic cloning, and there was a war, and there was tampering on the planet. And so we don't look like we used to look. There you go with the Immaculate Conception. And in the book of Joseph and Aseneth, if you continue to listen to it, there's a part where the visitor that was sitting on her bed actually gave her a, a, a cone that turned into bees. So got alternative Earth history. Okay, now you have the Orion, all right, the Dog Star. Okay, I want you to hear a little bit of this. Uh-oh. Did you hear that? A light code being an image and likeness of these. I'll put this in there too. This is about DNA and alternative Earth history when it comes to the Immaculate Conception. What? The Nibiru Hebrew. Okay, so I already put that in there for you. Let's go back to Joseph and Aseneth. Aseneth. Now listen to this part because this part has the pine cone and the bees and reminded me very much of the Candyman kind of theme with the mirror or the alternative world, the shadow world, the mirror world, and it had this Candyman theme to it. But actually, it was saying what Dan Winters was talking about with the bees and the oil. And remember, Arsenic is Mary, and we're talking about the Immaculate Conception. It also reminded me of some Odin and Donna with the tree of life and vampire stuff. I mean, there's a lot of different stuff going on here, but these are actually real characters that have actually been on the planet. What? Okay. Crazy. So I was able to see more than what they were telling us in the book of Joseph um, and Mary, where they told us about the Immaculate Conception. Okay. So I was just more than happy to be able to share that. Now, this is Mama Wata's book. Excellent. Okay. Matrilineally inherited, the Mama deities are born from Minota, Nana, Buklua, and the great mother of the mountain that rose from the celestial waters and became the earth. The Mama Patreon is arranged into specialized primary hierarchy of powerful deities, which usually heads a sub-pantheon of minor deities known as the Voodoo. The Voodoo are deities, minor gods, cosmologically represented as forces of nature and are defined as the dynamic anima of life on Earth. Remember I was saying, I was reading in the Atlas, the anima, two different sides of the forces of male and female. Remember I was reading from you in here on the Atlas? Okay. We're forces of nature. Actually, nature, the stuff that we are made of is us. It's our ancestors. It's the embedding. That is how the more we're able to plug in and empathize with the world around us and the planet, the reason why that self-perpetual embedding, the awareness of it, that consciousness makes the spark for the Hebrew Israelite on a deeper level as a light code being. Language coming from a light code being, Hebrew, Phoenician, Iconian language that came from angel language. The letters are the shadow off of the light. So now you contain the entire light, but can do deviation. That's what language is. Do divination. Divination. Chop them up and make the alphabet out of so now at one point I'm looking at Santos Bonacci, and I'm seeing how the sound wave, there we go. I'm looking at the sound wave and I'm looking at how he breaks down the zodiac using tropical astrology and using the sound wave. You got to look up sound wave if you don't know what I'm talking about. So I'm looking at Santos Bonacci. I'm going to put his videos in there too, so you can know what I'm talking about. So I study Santos Bonacci stuff too online. I have the habit of putting certain things together. Once I start to understand it more, some lights and sparks go off. Please do check him out. And the reason why is because the zodiac, being a representation of the planet and different parts of the planet representing the zodiac, like I was saying, we are a mini model of a macro concept. So when you look at the tree of life, or you look at the atlas, go over the, you've been with me, you know about these concepts, right? Perception between flat and round is about knowledge and the ability to perceive what they did with that concept, you know, and why they did it. The straightest point between line A and line B is to fold the paper when it comes to being quantum, to embed and to fold. And that's what we have with our DNA. They said that our DNA is junk. There's junk DNA in there. It's not. It's dormant, or it hasn't been activated. And so when you look at Santos Bonacci, and I was looking at Santos Bonacci, and I was looking at different parts of the earth as different parts of the body, and looking at the chakra system, and looking at uh, the chakra system as different parts of the planet, right? Um, like Aquarius and Pisces being at the feet and Aquarius being above that. So we're talking about tree of life and stacking these different Taurus energies. I could see the giant, or at least the potential of a piece of earth being an actual representation of a geological mass, okay? And being able to locate it on a map, like, okay, the energy travels through here. So Santos Bonacci was really good for that. If you want to look at the earth itself as the macro and us as the minor, then looking at him as far as astrology, as far as the zodiac, was perfect. But then when you take into account, because he's talking about the Immaculate Conception, and at one time he was like, I'm listening to him, and he's like, Jesus was not an actual person, or these characters were not actual people. But that's what's so beautiful about learning and about having different perceptions. And what's beautiful about being a teacher and a student at the same time is to be able to make those adjustments. So I'm listening to this master teacher talk about astrology, tropical astrology, and I'm able to glean so much. I still learn. It's so embedded. There's always more to learn. You get to the point where you know enough to know that you don't know anything, because there's always going to be, knowledge is so vast. It's a living energy. It's alive, just like the letters, just like we are. So I'm listening to this man, one of my teachers, Santos Bonacci, and I'm looking at the history of the giants, and then I see Asir, the Duke of Tears, presentation on Earth history. I saw Seven Bomer's presentation on calcified trees and the terrain not being what we think it is. That was years ago. And you start to put these pieces together. And after seeing Asir's presentation, you're going to like that, okay? With our DNA and our past, there were various different types of different genetic combinations here. Confirmation of that would be the Dan Winters videos that I gave you on the Earth history, the DNA ET history, okay, the galactic history of the planet. Pretty much gave you what you need. You can also just go look up the book of Joseph in the Bible, because I gave you the alternative one already. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Here we go. The Dagon, the African fish god. Oh, this one. Nope, nope. Okay. Hey, my goodness. This. The African Dagon, the ancient Syria, made of black sand, soap, stone, and decorated with African cowrie shells for the eyes and mouth. Dagon was one of the 8 new or pristine ancestors of the African people. or pristine ancestors of the African people who came from Sensunu, Semian, Semen, Hermophilus, the central waters. They were centrally represented in Kemetic Egypt, Egyptian astrology, and the sign of An. Sesame Nu, Semen, is the celestial region from which the solar sun gods were born from the divine serpent mother, Isis, of which Horus, being the first Dagon, is derived from the Hebrew Digi, which is further derived from the Sanskrit Dev, Ag, symbolizing the sacred solar arc. During the ancient times, Dag was read from right to left as Gad, Gad, loosely translated as goddess of the day. One of the Gad, is one of the lost tribes, one of the tribes in the Bible. The Gad tribe of Gad. My Bible is downstairs. Yeah, just look at the tabernacle when they were gathered, all the tribes at the Holy of Holies, and they had all the tribes there. Gad is one of them. So the lineage of Jesus is also tied right in there, nice and neatly. Okay, we're wrapping up soon. At some point during the rise of patriarchy, a group of Buddhists believed to be the Brahmins broke away from the divine African mother and, according to the ancient Hindu text, only worshipped her son consort Linga, Linga, Amun-Ra, who was probably known to them then as Lepati law. There's such a thing that I was studying called Shatipati Guru Yoga that has to do with the female vaginal exercises for therapeutic means for vaginal health, just like pressure points on the outside. Women can use pressure points, and men. There are pressure points that you can use in your vaginal areas that also increase health and work with Kundalini energy. They teach that also in ancient sciences. It also helped us to control our sexual desires and stuff like that. So you didn't have to run around and be a slave to it as much as we are now, because we practiced controlling that more, holding your semen and stuff like that. This may have been the same period that the priest of Amun-Ra seized the temples of the Sibyls, forcing many to flee to Adona, Ionia, and into Asia Minor. Now we're running into the studies that it should start to get more familiar, where it's blending in with things that you've studied on your own. Good day, beloved. Much love to you and yours. I can't say enough how much I appreciate you learning and growing with me. Because the more that you stay with me and you're learning and growing, the more that I know someone else out there can connect with the mentality of the information. And that's what we need to change the consciousness of the planetary grid. They, or at least a group of these Black Buddhists, are alleged to have also immigrated to ancient Greece and found Thrace, because it is there where the first evidence of the sacrificing of widows and the racial casting system is found. Some segments of the Buddhist sects known as the Hans, fled to Italy, where they were known as the Black Eutharians, Etruscan. And perhaps joined with the Black Umbrans and reestablished Mama's worship in the form of the triple-headed goddess Genghis. Do you remember Genghis Khan? Now here in Mama Wata's book, she has all the deities that she recorded. This is an excellent book. You can trace the usurping, what was stolen and what was morphed into other cultures. You can trace the mother deities that they turned into father deities, the matriarch, the patriarchal, you could trace them. Okay? So what I was saying in the beginning is, when it comes to the consciousness grid and the unconscious mind, and what Jung was saying about ancestral memory, he was saying that there's a group unconscious grid with the symbols that he was saying are archetypes, right? Well, that leads to, if there's symbols, which leads to ancestral memory, and we're archons and we're Hebrew Israelites, then that says that this information that was kept away from us, it triggers something. Yes, the Gad tribes. Okay, it's triggering something. That's why when people take trips, they say to Egypt, they say, I would love to take a trip to Egypt and be in one of those temples and feel my freaking genetic code just freaking, because stuff be happening to me right now. I can only imagine what would happen if I was actually in one of those temples and stuff, you know, where that memory would just like freaking jumpstart somewhere else again. It's thrilling once you know what's happening and what can happen. And it not just about waking ancestral memory, but about purging and being able to cleanse away and make the choices to, you can get with this or you can get with that. Take what you need and leave the rest. Not everything that we were doing was something that I want to do, but not everything that we were doing was something that I want to leave. Case in point, how I feel about being in this present time right here and now. Not everything that we're doing is bad. Not everything that we're doing I consider good. But we can take what we need and we can leave the rest. We don't have to lie about where it came from and hide things and feel so bad about our intellectuality or our spirituality that we're changing the stories and hiding stuff and killing people, okay, and all kinds of craziness like that. Like, we can truly grow. Like, you ain't got to go do nothing to nobody because you found a different truth to compare to the one that you're already standing on. You can make adjustments or not, because the truth is the truth. You can't change my truth. It's not in jeopardy. So you can say what you want. So someone else's information can't knock you off your square if that truth is truly truth. And if you're after really the truth, then you want something probably to try to knock it off so you can test it. Show thyself approved. Ancient Rome, these are the black doves, the Sibyls. This is what happened to the tribes that knew this knowledge. The women. Rather, one of the oldest deities is Mama, is a holy, horrific title denoting great reverence attributed to any African goddess, particularly of the waters. As the African Chaldean, Remember the Chaldeans? And that goes with the magic and the Ka, encasing things in stone and being able to conjure spirits and make golems and all kinds of stuff. It's the same lineage as Jesus, Joseph, Mary. They were attached to these outer world beings and had the same genetic DNA or similar. As an African Chaldean account goes, Ishtar, in her inconsolable grief, angered at the rebellion and betrayal of her, prophesied through one of her sibyls the following fate that would befall her beloved African people. Spake Ishtar like a child, uttered the great goddess her speech, all to corruption are tuned are turned, and then I, in the presence of the gods, prophesied, and as I prophesied in the presence of the gods, evil to evil were devoted all my people, and I prophesied, I, the mother, have begotten my people, and like the young of the fishes, they fill the sea. The gods concerning the spites were weeping with me. The gods at seats, seated in lamentation, covered with their lips for the coming evil. As promised, for the great apostasy against her laws, she retaliated and nuded their world, nation, as they knew it, with a great and mighty flood. However, before doing so, she gathered her devoted and preserved her sacred seed inside the blood of the Sibyls. Under those divine guidance, she led them and her families along with the great elder I, Io, Iao, Onus, Oannes, Noah, his sons, to the new world. It was in her sacred Argos, moon crescent boat that she guided them across the great dark mysterious sea to the Arnegen shores of Delos and Indonesia. Those doves that were sent forth were the black doves, or the transmigrated souls of the Sibyls, whose priesthoods were already well known and long established in the ancient Ethiopia, Egypt, Mesopotamia, and other ancient lands that were spared from the great flood. We know this to be so because Herodotus, who actually met one of the temple Sibyl's priestess, further recounted the story directly told to him of how they arrived in their new land and established the sacred Amphi temples in Libya, Libya, or Libya, and at the Dodona, Delphi, and Delos of the Grecian islands. He writes that at Dodona the priestess were delivered. The oracles have a story that two black doves flew away from the Tebas in Egypt, and one of them landed at Dodona, and the other in Libya. The former perched on an oak and speaking with a human voice told them that there on that very spot should be an oracle of Zeus, Horus. Those who heard her understood the words to be a command from heaven and at once obeyed. The dove, which flew to Libya, told the Libyans to found the oracle of Ammon, located at the oasis of Siwai, which is also an oracle of the thunder god Zeus. The people who gave me this information were the three priestesses of Dodona, Promenia, the eldest. This is a picture of the black doves, the Sibyls. Ancient Roman catacomb drawing of the Sibyls, the black doves sent out by Mama Ishtar to test for dry land. Some accounts reported that one of them returned carrying an olive branch, which is accredited to being the sacred to the black goddess. The olive branch is sacred to the black goddess. And Greece, or is it Italy? Yeah, they have the temple of the black goddess where they go in there and they pray. I actually put that on one of my videos. Leads me to this. Okay. These set of cards was like no one other. It wasn't really so much as to tell other people what, tarot cards for other people, but for you to learn about yourself and what you needed to prove with yourself. The role of women, lastly, the role of women in ancient Libya. While North African people, like those of other African cultures, have been described as matriarchal, such labels are alien and therefore inadequate to describe the multi-level approach of governance and indigenous societies had. Sanctuary was the domain for both genders, so that neither ever had sole authority over the other. However, the fiercely partitional Greeks, Romans, and later colonial era scholars who harbored such systems where women had any rights or power. They had no rights or power, but a series of negative descriptions upon these indigenous societies. So that's how it slowly got taken away, by mixing with cultures that did not value the system we had where woman was equal to man. From the patriarchal and patriarchal viewpoint, matriarchal cultures were pathological, infinite, sexual, immoral, or weak at worst, and absurd at best. Thus, their horror and disgust at the proliferation of influential priestess, female warriors, and all powerful mother goddesses they encountered in Africa. So they did not like the presence of the black woman being in power. Yet it was only in this more equalitarian environment that the Amazonians, the Sibyls, Amazons, and the world's first known universal religion, the cult of Aseneth, Isis, would have been possible and permitted to flourish only in those type of environments, because the world had changed, as you will see when you check out that video on Sarah Ducateers. Check out Dan Winters. You got plenty of stuff that blow your mind and be like, what? They didn't tell us this in school. No, they didn't. They didn't tell you that in school because they simply didn't want to. They wanted a whole bunch of fishies. They didn't want intelligent people, okay? They wanted to just be able to stick the hook in there and just be like, okay, you. They didn't want you thinking, be like trying to duck. Like, I know that's the hook. I know that's the hook. Anyway, this was about Joseph and Mary. I always wondered about the Immaculate Conception and more about us. And, it explains the DNA. It explains the alternative Earth history. It's like, what? We are interesting creatures. So go find out about it. Much love to you and yours. Thank you so much for being with me. I love it when you learn with me. And I'm out. Oh, please check me out on the YouTube at Regina's Rabbit Hole. I have like at least 6 years worth of videos there. I try to make them interesting. A lot of times I re-edit them and do things to them so they won't all just be like this. Some of them I put little cute pictures and stuff in them when I have the space to do that. Okay, I'm out. Immaculate Conception. What? It really happened. That pine cone and those bees. And he just shook her head, and he was an Iconian. He was an outer world being. He was sitting on her virgin bed that was covered in purple and gold. What? That was Mary, y'all. That was Mary. Be Mary. Much love to you and yours. Be valuable.